Last time, I conducted a 100-day experiment to find out how many rats I could breed. This time, we're gonna breed 1,000 rats. We learned a valuable lesson last time. I could do much more productive things with my life, but also that rats were a poor choice to breed for mass quantity. Let me elaborate. We're looking at 3 criteria for a good animal to mass produce: low nutrition, high reproduction, and low upkeep. Rats are super efficient in the nutrition department and love to bone, but absolutely nutcracker us in the upkeep department. See, rats are a tame creature. This means that they don't need a fence but require constant training to stay tame. Every 9 days, in fact. If I had chosen a chicken, for example, I could save immense amount of time on training. To combat this, I will need a lot of animal tamers that are dedicated 24/7 to showering my rats with love, affection, and corn. I'm going to keep on a lookout for more potential animal tamers to convert to our cause via raids, crash landed survivors, and ancient dangers. Children also make great workers due to their love of animals and lack of nutritional needs. Our next big problem would be, how do we get enough hay for all of these rats? Last time we turned Ratty into a mechanator, and through utilizing haulers and agrahands we could effectively mass produce hay with very low upkeep. Every rat consumes 3.2 hay per day. For 100 rats, this is 320 hay every single day. But rats do have one redeeming feature. Since rats are a tamed animal, I can make them follow me to new zones. So let's recap. We need to convince more people to join our colony and plant 1,420 hay grass. The 100th day started taking assessment of the current situation. We have 311 plots of hay grass currently and around 3,600 hay in storage. We would need to get more agrahands and plant more hay if we were to sustain our rats on hay, and in turn we had to build up our production facilities. More power, more gestators, and more mechs. Our base also looked like shit. The colony was currently sleeping 5 inches from each other in a dimly lit room full of daylilies. It was time to expand and make way for more room for my staff. Over the first week, the raids were fairly trivial. At this point, there were a dozen raiders or so, but with the wealth that would be skyrocketing through increased rat density, our defenses had to be tempered and strengthened. On the morning of the 108th day, a Catwoman came crashing down from the sky. We did a little tomb raiding and found some more potential converts during this time, plus a few animal pulsers which could come in handy down the road. Another few days and another 2 recruits decided they wanted to leave our conversion chamber. Our rat population was starting to grow past our nutritional production, and I had finally run out of hay on day 113 with over 300 rats present in the colony. I would now have to expose my rats to the dangers of the world through grazing outside my base, and so the great rat migration had begun. Now, there are some issues with my rats being outside. My tamers have a longer run to tame the rats. The rats are more susceptible to threats from raids and predators, and the bone density ratio is lowered. With the rat population doubling at a terrifying rate, I had to do some mathematical modeling to compare our expected rat growth versus an acceptable standard. On paper, this rat population will grow at a rate of roughly 1.6 rats every 6 days, but it's not so straightforward. Rats give birth at a rate of 0.27 a day, but also take 6 days to reach the age of consent. This gives us a bone ratio of 0.133 repeating, of course. Taking into account 2 days of inefficiencies, you have an adjusted bone rate of 0.1143. We also had to estimate the amount of females in a colony, but I made this simple and put it as 50% of the existing populace. So the final calculation is pretty simple. Take the previous day's rat amount and add the amount of female rats multiplied by the adjusted bone rate. Here are some graphs. We are essentially predicting to hit 1,000 rats in 32 days, and in 100 days have 45,621.97 rats. So how can I sustain this many rats? Well, I can't. What will give out first, my PC or the total nutrition possible on the map? So many questions and only one way to find out. We started to hit our cap for mechanoid production, and we were running out of space for power. To combat these issues, I started relocating my mechanoid production facility and the power station. The next few weeks would see the birth of my new shiny mech production lab armed with numerous band nodes to increase our capacity constraints. I was thinking about taking on the first mechanoid boss, the Diabolus, but at this point I didn't think it would add too much aside from giving us a bit more bandwidth through the gear that it unlocks. We had finally hit a critical threshold where aside from a plague or mass incineration, any casualties would barely touch the hive mind's population growth rate. By day 119, we could see that our math was pretty close. The expected number at this point should be 505 rats, and we had 490. In the coming days, a large raid from the Bear Shogunate appeared just north of my grazing rats. They were bristling with heavy weapons and dense metallic armor. After surveying their force, I realized that my current defenses would not hold against this raid. See, the current issue I have with my defense is that the raiders are going to attack, and they're going to attack my turrets or colonists, right? Because of this, they're going to thin through my defense, which is also my offense, before I can take out enough of them to make them flee, essentially. Now, what if they had too much to target? What if we tarp hit them with targets, right? And I have one source of a lot of targets. You probably guessed at this point, I'm thinking of making an organic wall. As the shogunate started coming in, I changed my loud area to a small rectangle to have all my rats run back and forth and act as a target. And you know what? It kind of worked. The raiders were too preoccupied shooting the rats that the colonists and turrets actually shot them pretty risk-free. Now, the rats were there a bit late, and some of the turrets got destroyed. Actually, some of them blew up, killing dozens of my rats. But you know what? It kind of oddly worked. We did take down the raid with 0 casualties or serious wounds to any colony member. That's if you don't count rats as a colony member. I do not. Sorry, PETA. So we lost a few dozen rats through the living wall strategy, but this made the large raids actually quite easy. There was even a bright side where the alive rats consumed the dead rats and raiders, which made this very clean for the cleanup and also environmentally friendly. There was a bit of a decline in the growth curve as we lost a few dozen rats, and there were some inefficiencies in running around, but a few days later we were back to grazing and pumping out dozens of newborn rats every day. On day 132, we had over 800 rats, and the leg was really starting to hit. Running the game on 3x speed was now pretty much impossible, and 2x speed was starting to take a bit of a serious performance hit. It was only a matter of peaceful days, and I had successfully hit 1,000 rats on day 136. On paper, we should have hit this many rats by day 132, so we were a little bit behind the modeling, but with some bumps that checks out. But this journey left me with more questions than answers. How effective could a wall made of rats be? What would a caste system look like for rats? A warrior class, a wall class, the food class? How long could a rat population sustain itself through eating the other starving rats? And of course, the biggest question I had, could my computer handle 10,000 rats on one map tile?